What's up, everybody, and welcome to another set review for Duskmourn. This time, we're going to be covering all things blue. Now, this is my first set review of any Magic the Gathering set, so some of this I'm learning right alongside of you, and this is all again in my pursuit my pursuit of my path to pro, and because I need to be a student of the game, and part of being a student of the game is studying the cards. So we're going to take a look at every common, uncommon, rare, and mythic card in each of the colors, including colorless and multicolor for Duskmourn, and each of those are going to be split up into a video, and we're going to get those out so you can learn alongside of me, see where I might draft these cards, see where they might be a good fit in standard or in limited formats, according to me, who you may or may not take information from, but we're learning alongside each other. So based off of what I know, I'm going to be sharing that information with you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to go ahead and start with comments. And these are ordered in CMC cost order. So as we go, they will get more expensive as we go down the line. So first up, we have Enter the Enigma. For 1 blue, it's a sorcery, and target creature can't be blocked this turn. Draw a card. Not a combat trick, but it does allow you to target a card, maybe with your big boy, slam this on it, can't be blocked. Or maybe you have a card that needs to do damage to a player in order to trigger an effect. You know, good synergy there. But one mana for drawing a card, not bad. If I'm running a blue deck, who knows if blue's going to be good in this set. In Bloomburrow, it wasn't the best. Maybe worked well in Frogs, and that was about it. But here, this is a potential draft for you, just for some card draw, and maybe you're trying to make some slippery characters. The art definitely reminds me of like the Neon Dynasty set as well. So not super spooky, but I'm sure we're going to see some more spooky ones here as we move forward. Next up, for 1 blue, we have Unable to Scream. That's actually kind of creepy. So it's like a person stuck inside a doll and can't scream or ask for help. It's an enchantment aura, and so you enchant creature as soon as you play it. Enchantment creature loses all abilities and is a toy artifact creature with base power and toughness of 0-2 in addition to its other types. As long as enchanted creature is face down, it can't be turned face up. Interesting. So if somebody manifests Dread and made a 2-2 creature with a card face down, you could then put this on it and make it a 0-2, and it can't be turned face up. So you could lock in somebody's Manifest Dread unless they had a way to get rid of your enchantment. But as we learned in the white color, there is a lot of enchantment synergies, especially in white. So this might play well into like a blue-white deck. We got another enchantment. Next up, for 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 blue, is Creeping Peeper. Well, that's gross. It's like a spider with a big eye in like an archive. Oh, there's more of them. There's another one back there. Gross. So 2 CMC, 2/1. It's a creature eye is the type. You can tap it for 1 blue, so it is a mana dork, and spend this mana only to cast an enchantment spell, unlock a door, or turn a permanent face up. So it's a mana dork with limitations. So you can't use it to cast creatures, only enchantments, doors, or turning a permanent face up. Next up is Don't Make a Sound. 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 blue. Apparently has, if I had to guess, that's Jace. I don't know like why Jace is in there. It's an instant. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. If they do, Surveil 2. If they do pay the 2, you get the Surveil 2. So it's a counter spell, but you get the Surveil as well. So it's like a slightly more expensive Spell Pierce, but with a Surveil. If you're doing a counter deck, it might be something. Especially if you maybe doing like a blue-black and need some way to put something in the graveyard. Surveil mechanics. Might be a decent card. I just don't ever hold out high hope for blue. Like maybe I need to just be more open about the power of blue, but blue works really well in constructed. I don't know about limited. It always seems to be a little lackluster in the limited formats. Next up for 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 blue, we have Piranha Fly. It's a 2/1 creature, fish, insect. It's interesting. So it has flying, and then Piranha Fly enters tapped. So if we go by our scale, which is 2 CMC for a 2/2 is like an average cost, right? And then a 3 CMC for a 3/3, and a 4 CMC for a 4/4, right? Like that's what we treat as sort of like an average for value of a card. Right off the bat, 2 CMC for a 2/1 kind of like bumps it down a little bit, and like maybe not quite a C-, but it's not a strong C either. Giving it piranha or giving it flying, it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's probably a decent value. It's got a keyword 2/1, so it can block like a 2/2 or a 3/2 in the air. But then it enters tapped. I'm like, there's already cards I've seen that destroy tapped creature cards. There's definitely some mechanics with cards being tapped going on. So I think right off the bat, as far as value goes, this is probably a solid C- in my book. Stalked Researcher. This is a 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 blue for 3/3. So right off the bat, that's awesome. But what we find out in the very first line, it's defender, so it doesn't even attack. But maybe Eerie will do something for us. And that's whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock room, Stalked Researcher can attack this turn as though it didn't have defender. So this, again, we got to keep our eyes on enchantments. There's a lot of interplays going on with enchantments. So a blue-white, slamming some enchantments. Now all of a sudden this thing can attack. But even as a defender, having a power is nice because I can block and do damage to the thing that I'm blocking. So I do like this. I think it's a good value card. Probably like a C+, maybe even a B-. So definitely above average value for a common card, and would snag that. If you haven't caught on, C is average, right? C is an average value card. Next up, for 3 CMC, we have Erratic Apparition. It's 2 colorless, 1 blue. It's a creature spirit for a 1/3. Has flying and vigilance, so it does have 2 keywords. And Eerie. So whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, so that's the Eerie ability, Erratic Apparition gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So if you're, again, in an enchantment deck, making enchantments, this essentially becomes a 2/3 with flying and vigilance anytime that occurs. Hey, shout out to Sergeant Salt. Appreciate the follow. Thanks for hanging out. So with the keywords and with the fact that it's a 2/4, essentially, I'd give it above average value, like a C+. I wouldn't go above and beyond because it does require a lot of synergies to become that 2/4. The flying vigilance is nice. It has lack of better term, it's got a big ass on it, so it can definitely block some things that are in the air. Next up is Tunnel Survivor, 3 CMC, 2/2, so already a little bit below average as far as the cost to power and toughness, but it is a human creature detective, and when Tunnel Surveil enters, create a 1/1 white glimmer enchantment creature token. So value of this card just went up. So we get the glimmer token, we see here, it's a 1/1. It's also an enchantment, so any enchantment decks definitely going to work well in. It's essentially a 3/3 then for 3. So actually levels its average value up because it comes right at the level that we want, and then gives you an enchantment. So in the enchantment deck, I would give this like a C+, B- because it gives you some more cards. If we're looking at it in a vacuum, I would say it's probably an average card. Next up is Twist Reality. It's a 3 CMC, 1 colorless, 2 blue, and this is one of those creepy art ones. Like, look at this thing. It's nasty. It's got a bunch of eyeballs on the side. It's got like people's faces. It's got like the little alien mouth, so like a mouth inside a mouth thing going on. And then this person's over here. We're seeing like the DNA double helix thing going on, and this is coming out of their arm. I don't know. It's creepy, all of it. But it's an instant. Choose one, counter target spell or manifest dread. So it's a 3 mana for manifesting dread or countering a spell. It's kind of expensive, but if you have a manifest dread deck or strategy around that, again, very synergistic card requirement. So I would say it's a little bit below average on value. The counter target spell might make it kind of average, but it depends what you get. It's the luck of the draw. Like you could get nothing good to actually manifest dread on, and it's 3 mana for a 2/2. You're like, eh. So unless you have a strategy or can build around it, then that's going to be average or slightly below average card. Next up is 4 CMC Clammy Prowler. It's a 2/5, and it's an enchantment creature horror. And then whenever Clammy Prowler attacks, another target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. So this thing, it's got a big ass on it at 5 toughness. And it gives the ability of another card that you have that's attacking with it to not be blocked. So if you have cards, again, that need to do damage to the player, that's really nice. For 4, again, it's all about synergies. In a vacuum, it's a below average card. If you have cards that you need to do damage to the player, then this is an above average card. It's got good defense on it. This could be... You'd want for 4 CMC like a 4/4, and so if I brought this down to a 4 and then up to a 3, so like it's a 3/4 if we wanted to try to bring it closer and conceptualize it a little bit better. So it's still like a below average card in a vacuum. Next up is Glimmerburst. Oh, I do like this art though. You got this character in there with the holding the crystal, trying to like fight off the darkness and the demons or whatever is going on. Pretty cool. 4 CMC, draw 2 cards, create a 1/1 white glimmer enchantment creature token. So 4 CMC for some card draw and a token. I would say this is a little bit below average, but again, if you're in an enchantment deck, you need some card draw, and you had some synergies going on with it. Here, we'll take a look at the glimmer token again. Then this could potentially fit into a constructed build pretty well. I think drafting this would be pretty hard. Vanish from sight, 4 CMC, instant, is target non-land permanent's owner. Target non-land permanent's owner puts it on top of or bottom of their library, surveil 1. I would say this is below average. It's like a wind gust. But more expensive. It does give you surveil ability, so I would say overall below average card. I probably wouldn't draft that. We got our first room of the blue set in common rarity. On one side, we have Underwater Tunnel for 1 blue, and that's when you unlock this door, surveil 2. So 1 to surveil 2, not a bad deal. Plus, it's a cheap enchantment and room to get on the board. And there's a lot of cards that synergize with rooms and enchantments. So a nice cheap enchantment for you. On the other side of this is Slimy Aquarium. And it's when you unlock this door, manifest dread. So look at the top 2 cards, pick one, put it down, face down. And it's a 2/2 creature. And then put a 1/1 counter on that creature. So now it becomes a 3/3. So a 3/3 for 4, plus it's a manifest. But it's unlocking a room. So again, enchantment and room synergies is really where this is going to come in. If I haven't said yo yet, Sergeant Salt, yo, what's up? I do appreciate the follow. Next up is Daggermaw Megalodon. Yeah, Megalodon is a 6 CMC, 4 colorless, 2 blue, 5/7. So it already foundationally, it is a average value card. It's a good value card, right? Just standard value. Vigilance, keyword, boom, already up in its value. So we're at like C+ territory, or maybe B- with vigilance, depending on how much you weigh vigilance. And then it's island cycling. So it's a nice big body. Plus, if you can't play it, it does allow you to island cycle. So you can pay 2, discard the card, search your library for an island card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. So if there's just no way you're going to be able to play it, it is at least cycling for you. There are some decks like Living End in Modern, for instance, where you're trying to grab big bodies and just like cycle them out into your graveyard and then like pull them all out. So that might go well in a constructed deck. I think it would be hard to draft this card. Just because it's expensive. Like, I'm going off Bloomburrow. Bloomburrow was like the last one I took really seriously, and that was a really fast set. This might be a slower set, so I should caution that if it's a slower set, maybe this would be worth taking because it is above average value. Plus, like I said, if you're just not going to get to a point where playing it, at least it will allow you to get some card draw. Next up is Meat Locker for 3 CMC. It's a room. And then when you unlock this door, tap up to 1 target creature and put 2 stun counters on it. So you're essentially taking the card out for 3 turns. So yeah, every time it would become untapped. So the turn that's in, untap, that's that turn. And then 3rd turn, it would go to untap. And then 4th turn, it finally would untap. So like, yeah, you're essentially taking it out for 3 turns. And then the other side of this room is Drowned Diner. It's a 5 CMC, 3 colorless, 2 blue. And when you unlock this door, draw 3 cards and then discard a card. It's kind of expensive. Just the fact that it's like an okay cost enchantment. So it helps with the enchantment and room decks. And it would essentially stun a card, but 5 CMC just to draw 3 cards and then essentially discard a card. So you're only up 2 cards. I mean, maybe if you need an excuse to get a card out of your hand into the graveyard for some whatever reason, like synergistically that might help. So I'd say that the right side of that's below average. I would say the Meat Locker side slightly above average. Okay, so that completes our commons. Next up in blue is we have the uncommons. We got 15 uncommons to go through here. Again, we're going to do it in an ascending order of CMC. So starting with the 1 cost uncommons, we have Scrabbling Skull Crab for 1 blue. It is a 0/3 creature crab skeleton. Creepy art. I like it. I like it. It appropriately gives me nightmares. I like it. So, This card has Eerie, so whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, target player mills 2 cards. So it's a blocker, and then whenever you play an enchantment, the mill 2 cards, maybe you could build a decent constructed deck around it. It is like just ambiguous 2-card removal for the target player. So I would say below average card. I probably wouldn't be chomping at the bit unless there's a really cool like mill opportunity. We haven't gotten to black yet. I think black's next. Yep, black is next. I have the colors on my wall over here, so that's what I'm looking at. So black is next, and maybe there's some opportunity to mill and do some really cool stuff. But in a vacuum, below average card. Next up is Fear of Isolation. 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 blue for 2/3. So above average already. So we're already at like a C+ because of the 2/3. And flying. I mean, we're solidly C+ territory, B- just from value alone. As an additional cost to cast a spell, return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. That's going to bring it back down. I would say it's still probably a C+. But you could just take a cheap token off the ground, or you could even grab something like this. Wait, no, that wasn't when you play it. Maybe you have enter the battlefield effects that you want to take advantage of again. So it is a nice way to bounce a card essentially back to your hand to be able to play it again. So it'd be a card I'd keep my eye on in draft as far as value goes. A 2/3 body for 2 just by itself. Pretty good just to have something in the air. Next up is Flood. That's going to be hard for me to say. Flood Pit's Drowner. 2 CMC, 2/1, creature Merfolk, Flash, Vigilance, and then when Flood Pit's Drowner enters, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. And then for 1 colorless, 1 blue, you can tap and then shuffle Flood Pit's Drowner and target creature with a stun counter on it into their owner's libraries. So it's essentially removal, but off of value alone, 2 CMC, 2/1. So I love the 2/1 because it can block a 2/2 or a 3/2. Flash, so nice little combat trick, and it has vigilance. So overall, I would say this is above value, or above average value. So I would definitely be keeping an eye on this card to draft if I was in blue, because then it also has an optional essentially removal from there. So if you have 4 mana, you could remove a card, shuffle it into their library. Next up is Get Out for 2 blue, and it's an instant, and the target choose one, counter target creature or enchantment spell, or return 1 or 2 target creatures and or enchantments you own to your hand. So since it's an instant, this might be a nice way to protect a room or an enchantment. So if you are running an enchantment deck for whatever reason, maybe protecting those enchantments to pull them off of the field. This might actually be really interesting for like auras. So if they're going to go kill a creature and you have an aura on that creature that you want to save, you could return that aura enchantment back to your hand. So if you're in that enchantment deck, I think this is really good. For 2 mana, counter target creature enchantment spell, that's pretty much all I'm seeing so far. I mean, I've seen a couple artifacts, so that is definitely, I would say, above average value card. Definitely something to keep in mind for limited, potentially grabbing for limited, just the ability to counter those creatures in enchantments that they may play. Next up, Paranormal Analyst, 2 CMC, 1/3, so average. It's got a big booty on it. Good blocker here. And then whenever you manifest dread, put a card you put into your graveyard this way into your hand. We like it. You can cover a face-down manifested creature with this reminder card. A manifest creature can't be turned face up. So, there's actually a token for manifest. That's interesting. Next up. So, where would I rate that one? Maybe. I don't know. Average. I would say average. It doesn't really jump out at me as super special. Next up is 2 CMC, Stay Hidden, Stay Silent. So we got this like Ghostbustery dude again. It's an enchantment aura. So when you play it, it enchants creature, and then when Stay Hidden, Stay Silent enters, tap enchanted creature. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. You can also then pay 4 or 6 CMC, so 4 colorless, 2 blue, shuffle enchanted creature into the owner's library, then manifest dread, activate only as a sorcery. So this is essentially a removal card. There might be a trick that you could do with this where like there was a board wipe that we saw, for instance, in white that was destroy all untapped creatures, so you could then tap one of your own creatures. But actually you can't. This doesn't have flash. So you can't even use it as like a combat trick. I mean, it's essentially removal. Yeah, you just tap a creature and then it stays tapped and you can't do anything with it until you have enough mana to shuffle it into their library, which is interesting. So I would say below average in general, because that 6 CMC is kind of crazy high. Cursed Windbreaker. It's a 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 blue artifact equipment. And when Cursed Windbreaker enters, manifest dread, and then attach Cursed Windbreaker to that creature. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature, and the other into your graveyard. I got to remember that. The other one goes in your graveyard. And I don't know if I've been saying that or leading anybody astray. The other one goes into your graveyard, doesn't go back on top of the library. Turn it face up anytime for its mana cost if it's a creature card. Equip creature has flying, equip 3 cost on there. Manifest Dread. And so basically this forces a Manifest Dread, and then you attach this to that creature, and then it has flying. So it essentially is a 2/2 flyer for 3, a little bit below average, but it is a artifact equipment, so it avoids the destroy enchantments thing that occurs, or if they destroy the card, like this still exists because it has an equip cost. So it is a way to sort of bounce this around. So if there's any effects like Valiant that we saw with the mice and Bloomburrow, for instance, that anytime it's a target of ability, it can do something. This might be a nice way to bounce that around, but it's a little expensive just to add flying to something, but it does give you a body at the same time. So I would say about average, maybe slightly below average. Fear of Imposters, 3 CMC, 1 colorless, 2 blue, 3/2. It's an enchantment creature nightmare, and it has flash. And then when it enters, counter target spell, its controller Manifest Dread. I would say above average. 3/2, so it's a nice blocker, can block a 3/3 or a 4/3 that might be on the board with flash. And then it can also counter a spell at the cost of giving them a 2/2 creature. So maybe they're casting something big, and you counter that, and in exchange you're essentially giving them a 2/2 creature. So I would say this is above average value. This would definitely be in that B plus, or not B plus territory, but like B territory. Nice solid card to draft, and especially if the format's a little slower at 3 mana, that's not too bad. Next up is, I like the art, I like the contrast here. Unnerving Grafts, 3 CMC, sorcery. Return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, Manifest Dread. So I would get to Manifest Dread and save a card. Well, not save a card because it's not at instant speed. Maybe bounce a card, because then enter battlefield effects, things like that to keep in mind. So it's essentially a 2/2 plus a card bounce for 3. I would say about average value. It's not super good in any way. If you need bounce mechanics, then maybe it would go up. So again, we're looking at synergies. Synergies would increase the value of this card, but in a vacuum, I'd say about average or to below average. Unwilling Vessel is a 3 CMC, so 2 colorless, 1 blue, 3/2 creature, human, wizard. So we got that Ghostbusters theme going on again. A little bit below average already, just off of the CMC and power and toughness. Has vigilance, keyword, might bring it up to average. Now it also has eerie, so whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, put a possession counter on Unwilling Vessel. When Unwilling Vessel dies, create an XX blue spirit creature token with flying, where X is the number of counters on Unwilling Vessel. So this actually is like a 2-for-1. It's a secret 2-for-1 card. You play this, and then if you play any enchantments or unlock a room, you're putting counters on this card, and then when it dies, you create an XX creature. So this would be some good value. I would say this is above average in a vacuum, and then I would probably draft it in an enchantment deck for sure, or enchantment room deck for sure. Ghostly Keybearer. It's a 4 CMC, 3 colorless, 1 blue, 3/3 creature spirit. So already below average, but it has flying, might bring it up to average with a keyword here. And then whenever Ghostly Bearer deals combat damage to a player, unlock a locked door of up to 1 target. So this is where things get spicy. You have a room that might have like a 6 CMC cost unlock. And then there's other cards out there that will make it so like this creature can't be blocked this turn. It already has flying, so it already has a built-in evasion. So you can just sit there and unlock expensive doors with this thing. So this would definitely go into a room deck for sure. So if you are building a room deck, I would put this in there. Definitely in constructed, this could be a really good fit. But in draft, potentially room strategy could be where it's at. Next up is Fear of Failed Test. Ooh, this is kind of weird. It's got like papers coming out of its face, multiple faces. They're obviously in like a library or archive or something. But 5 CMC, 2/7. So it's really more like a 4/5. So okay, about average on just the power and toughness with the CMC cost, but it's an enchantment creature, so think enchantment decks. And then whenever Fear of Failed Test deals combat damage to a player, draw that many cards. So you buff this thing, it gets through, trample, whatever, then you get to draw that many cards. So this could be spicy. I'd say it's above average, but it is expensive. So would work really well for like constructed decks in the enchantment space for card draw. But might just be a little too slow, and not enough makeup. There's too many. I've already seen a handful of spot removals, so might be too many ways to get rid of that. Fear of Falling. Now this is a crazy one. I don't know this is exploring all of our fears out there. I used to have a big fear of falling. I would have a lot of dreams about falling down the stairs, or like I would go and like trip and then like not quite hit the stairs, but just like coast down the stairs and then like hit the bottom of the landing, or like the bottom of the stairs and like roll. I'd have a lot of like weird being in the air dreams. And so anyways, Fear of Falling. 5 CMC, 3 colorless, 2 blue. Enchantment creature, Nightmare, 4/4. So a little underpowered already, but it has flying, so it's got a keyword. It might be like average. Whenever Fear of Falling attacks, target creature defending player controls gets -2, -0, and loses flying until end turn. So this is a really interesting. So basically, you can take the flyer out of the air, make it weaker, and get over the top of them. You had weird falling dreams as well. I would love us all to explore our fears as we move through these cards. If you're catching the YouTube video review of this, like drop your fears below. Like, did we cover one of your fears? We're going to go through all the colors, so we will eventually get to your fear. But if we covered one of your fears, drop it below. I want to know about it. Next up, Bottomless Pool. So on one side, 1 mana, is 1 blue, is when you unlock this door, return up to 1 target creature to its owner's hand. So nice bounce spell for 1. And it's getting an enchantment on the board. So again, think enchantment decks. And on the other side of this is Locker Room. 5 CMC, 4 colorless, 1 blue. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. So we've already seen some cards that make a card unblockable. So we were starting to think, okay, what are some cards that we really want this unblockable feature, some way to do damage to a player? And this is the card draw that we talked about, as well as there's other cards out there that will just unlock rooms for you. So something to keep in mind. Might work well for a room deck or an enchantment deck, because it is a cheap 1 blue enchantment to get on the board. In a vacuum, average. It's kind of hard to say on that one. Next one is Duskmourn's Domination for 6 CMC, 4 colorless, 2 blue, enchantment aura, enchant creature, you control enchant creature, enchant creature gets -3, -0, and loses all abilities. So you steal a card. Make it a little weaker on the power, but man, if it was a big boy, got a big old badunkadunk on it, just take it, and now you got a defender. I think way below average. It's so expensive, and then it just like hacks the card up. So I would see a hard time this card being played in constructed or in draft formats. All right, that's gonna complete uncommons. Moving on now to rares. We got 8 rares to get through here, again in ascending CMC value. First up is going to be the Silent Hall Creeper. It's a 2 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 blue, 1/1. So off the bat, all right, a little on the weak side. Enchantment creature horror. So it's an enchantment. All right, we don't want to, be aware of the enchantment. Silent Hall Creeper can't be blocked. All right, we're able to get in. So that's really nice. And then whenever Silent Hall Creeper deals combat damage to a player, choose one that hasn't been chosen. I can put 2/1/1 counters on Silent Hall Creeper. I can draw a card, or Silent Hall Keeper becomes a copy of another target creature you control. I actually, no, this went from like below average to average to like, this is solid B plus, A minus territory, especially if you can get a few of these different options onto this card. This is a really strong card. Maybe even so far as A. If you can get all three of these on there, or well, even two of them, get the counters on there, and draw the card. Like, okay, that's A minus, A territory. But if I can get this down, do damage, and then copy a big boy on the board, that's spicy. So I think some stuff in Constructed could definitely be done well. Potentially in Draft, you could take this if you have some synergies with it, like you really know where this is going to fit in your Draft deck. Potentially taking it. Yeah, this card does look crazy, but I think you got to be careful. This might be a trap. It's not super expensive, so it's not a super expensive trap, but at the same time, this could go sideways. This could be just a dead drop for you pretty quickly. Yeah, the cantrip features are pretty nice too. Next up is Entity Tracker. 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 blue, 2 3. So a little bit below average on the CMC to power and toughness ratio, but it does have flash, so bringing that up a little bit. And it also has Eerie. So whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, draw a card. So I would say it's above average card. I don't know, let's call it a C+ card. So a solid C+. It's okay. I think the combat trick of being able to flash it in might bring it up a little bit more. Maybe a B-, a potential draft for sure. But it's a little expensive. The Mind Skinner. It's 3 CMC, but it's 3 blue. This is the first 3 blue or 3 of any color that we've seen. It's a 10/1. Okay. Legendary enchantment creature nightmare. The Mind Skinner can't be blocked. All right. Okay. Can be blocked for 3, and it's 10 damage. So if they don't have any direct damage ability or destroy ability or target removal of any kind, you're taking 10 damage. If a source you control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage, and each opponent mills that many card. Would deal damage to an opponent, but prevent... Wait, if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage, and each opponent mill... So this is just swinging to mill. It's not even doing damage, because the damage is prevented. This is just milling 10 cards out your deck. Just straight up. There goes 10 cards. There goes 10 cards. In Limited, you have 40 cards. Turn 3, you've already pulled 10 of your cards. The 7 you drew plus 3 more. This thing swings 3 times, you're dead. I've already seen a couple of mill things, so this could be interested in Limited at the very least. It would just absolutely decimate their deck, because if they've already at turn 3 you play this, you manage to swing with it. Turn 4, they've already seen 10 cards in hand or played, and then you hack 10 off. Like, they've already lost 50% of their deck. You get a second one in, obviously 30 or 75%. It's like, yeah, that's scary. So I would say above average, just even in a vacuum, especially in Limited. Above average, definitely above average. B+, A-, A territory even. Like, that's just scary. Like they have to deal with that. They're gonna burn any removal that they have. Next up, 3 CMC, The Tale of Tamio. This is a saga. Enters, and after you draw a step, add a lore counter. So it's automatically, we're back to the original sagas, not these talents that we were seeing in Bloomburrow. So the first 3 lore counters are mill 2 cards. If 2 cards that share a card type were milled this way, draw a card and repeat the process. So you get to, for 3 turns, just mill 2 cards and draw a card, mill 2 cards, and just keep doing this as long as they have the same type. So if you had like a tribal deck that went along with this, you could really increase your chances to just keep drawing as many cards as you need. And do that for 3 turns. And then for the 4th lore counter, exile any number of target instant, sorcery, and or Tameo Planeswalker cards from your graveyard, copy them, and you may cast any number of the copies. That could definitely be scary and constructed. I don't think you could get that to synergize very well in limited. I think it would be kind of hard to go tribal in this limited format. Maybe not. Maybe you're just going like toys, or you go like horrors, or something like that. Like maybe you could get it to go off, but this would definitely be good in a tribal constructed deck. Next up is Enduring Curiosity. It's a 4 CMC, 2 colorless, 2 blue enchantment creature cat glimmer. So it's a glimmer in and of itself for 4/3, so slightly below average value, but it has flash. I would say bringing it back up, or maybe even slightly more. I really like the combat trick, so the ability to flash that in and be a defender and blow something up that they weren't expecting is really nice. And then whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Okay, so we got some card draw. And then when Enduring Curiosity dies, if it was a creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. It's an enchantment. So we've seen this effect a couple times with these enchantment creatures. If they die, they come back. They're an enchantment. They're not a creature anymore, but they still get the ability. So the ability here is whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So it just gives you card draw sitting on the board. So I would definitely say well above average, A- territory. This is a pretty solid card. Especially with the flash and then the card draw capabilities of it. Keeping in mind my scale is going to go to like S tier. So like A is good, but like S tier is S tier, you know. Oh, we see our second Leyline. This one is a Leyline of Transformation for 4 CMC, 2 colorless, 2 blue. It's an enchantment. It's obviously a Leyline, so if you have it in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. As Leyline of Transformation enters, choose a creature type. When creatures you control are the chosen type in addition to their other types, the same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. So again, constructed. So Leyline Transformation was something like a Tale of Tameo. You're doing some shenanigans around drawing cards and cycling through your deck real quick. In limited formats, I think this would be hard to make anything of value. So I think I'm pretty solidly going to skip over that in a draft. Next up is Marina's Vendrill's Grimoire. It's a 6 CMC legendary artifact. So we haven't seen a lot of artifacts. We've only seen like a handful. Gotta go. Thank you, Sergeant Salt. I appreciate you hanging around. We'll catch you next time. 6 CMC legendary artifact. When Marina Vendrill's Grimoire enters, if you cast it, draw 5 cards. Okay, 6 mana for 5 cards. It's a late game play. Refill your hand. Might have some play. You have no maximum hand size, and you don't lose the game for having 0 or less life. Whenever you gain life, draw that many cards. Whenever you lose life, discard that many cards. Then if you have no cards in hand, you lose the game. Interesting. This is so you have to like, this is all about keeping cards in hand. Like your cards become your life. Interesting. I think it's a little too expensive for limited. I think it definitely has some really interesting constructed consequences. I think there's a lot of shenanigans that can be done with it for sure. I think in a vacuum, it's probably stronger than in practice. In practice, I think it's a little too expensive. I don't know. Maybe it'll save you at the end of a longer game. the format hasn't been figured out yet, so we don't know. Are these going to be long, like mid-range to like long games in Duskmourn? If so, this is going to be an easy pick. If not, I think it solidly fits in some crazy constructed decks that people could do. The only downside is whenever you lose life, discard that many cards. So like somebody swings at you for 10, like you're just gonna die because you have to discard all your cards. So interesting card. I don't know quite where it fits. Next up and lastly, with the rares, we have another room. This one is the Central Elevator and the Promising Stairs. So the Central Elevator is 4 CMC, 3 colorless, 1 blue. It's obviously an enchantment room. And then when you unlock this door, search your library for a room card that doesn't have the same name as a room you control. Reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. And then on the Promising Stairs side, 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 blue. At the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 1. You win the game if there are 8 or more different names among unlocked doors of rooms you control. Okay, let me read that again. You win the game if there are 8 or more different names among unlocked doors or of rooms you control. So it's about getting essentially 4 cards down, 4 rooms down, and unlocking both doors, you would win the game. Again, I think this has some really interesting implications for Constructed. You can make an enchantment / room deck, and this card would help you do that. If you ran 4 of these, like you could automatically go search for different rooms with Central Elevator, and then keeping Promising Stairs down. As soon as you have 8 unlocked rooms, then you win the game. So I think this has some really interesting implications in Constructed. Definitely wouldn't draw that in Limited. There's no way you can guarantee you're going to get 4 room cards, let alone ones that you can unlock because they're reasonably priced, right? So probably avoiding pretty strongly in Constructed, but is definitely going to make an appearance in Limited. It's definitely going to make an appearance in Constructed. All right, down to the last 3 for blue. We are going to cover Mythic. Again, in ascending order of CMC. First up, we have for 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 blue, the Aberrant Oculus. Tell me how that's supposed to be said. Aberrant or Abhorrent Oculus. That is a creepy picture, though. Look, we got the Ghostbuster thing going on again. It reminds me of like an Eldrazi eyeball, like an eyeball from an Eldrazi fell out and is now like creeping in on him. It's a 5/5 for 3. Okay, I'm interested. You piqued my interest. What do we got going on? As an additional cost to cast this spell, exile 6 cards from your graveyard. Meh. I mean, we've got to be later in the game, obviously, to be able to cast this. You're not going to do this on turn 3 unless you have a way to just like dump a bunch of cards in your library. This could, unless you had some of those like sack lands. So again, Constructed could potentially see some play here. And it has flying, and then at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, Manifest Dread. So like if you could get this down, this thing is spicy. Yeah, playing this in a Reanimator deck for sure. White spells have return target creature with mana value 3 or less. Also true. It was one that even returned it to the battlefield. So that is another play, right? Kick this out into your graveyard, and then bring it right onto the battlefield with another card, and then it's a 5/5 with flying and Manifest Dread. So I think Constructed, you're definitely going to see this. I think this is going to be hard to draft. Unless there's a lot of really good reanimation options at common level. We're going to cover black next, so we'll take a look at those. But that is, if you can find the synergies, this thing is spicy for sure. So Constructed, absolutely. Next up in the Modern is Overlord of the Flood Pits. I don't know why a D next to a P is really hard for me to say, but it is. So Overlord of the Flood Pits is a 5 CMC, 5/3 enchantment creature avatar horror. It has impending 4 for 3 CMC, 1 colorless, 2 blue. So again, impending means you can play that 1 colorless, 2 blue, put it down on the board. It has 4 time counters on it, and at the beginning of your end step, remove a time counter, and after all those time counters are gone, it's actively in play. It has a flying, and whenever Overlord of the Flood Pits enters or attacks, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. So even though I do believe this is how this works, correct me if I'm wrong, but you could pay the impending, and then you get the effect of the enter effect. So you get to draw 2 cards and discard a card for 3. And then if it manages to live the 4 turns and the 4 time counters, then it turns into a flying 5/3. So again, this could be spicy in sort of an impending deck and constructed. I think you would have a hard time drafting this. Actually, drafting might be a little bit more interesting for this because it is going to force removal. If you don't have a better option on the board or in the pack, then forcing removal, but then getting card draw for 3 mana, not bad. Not bad. Next up is another... Ooh, this one's creepy. Ugh. So you got a dude, and then you see his reflections, and then he's got like multiple eyes in this little photo. He's got like this weird tentacly thing. He's got like a worm coming out of his mouth here, and he's got the multiple mouths thing. That's gross. Anyways, taking a look at this room, we have Mirror Room for 3 CMC, 2 colorless, 1 blue. And then when you unlock this door, create a token that's a copy of a target creature you control, except it's a reflection in addition to its other types. Oh, wow. Oh, I wonder if this is how that works. So what if I took Mirror Room and then mirrored Overlord of the Flood Pits? So something with impending on it. Does it lose impending? I think it loses impending. That's another thing that you could do. Then the other side of this card is Fractured Realm for 7 CMC. If a triggered ability of a permanent you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. So that's like the that Phyrexian card. I'm drawing a blank. The white one. Can't remember what it is. But basically makes all of your triggered abilities happen twice. This is really that points out something funny to me. I wonder if they have to limit the size of the name for the card on these half cards, because that Fractured Realm goes like almost right up to the 5. But in a vacuum, I would say this is I might draft this just to be able to copy a card, especially like a big card with impending on it. And then it's a okay-ish cost enchantment. So if I'm building like a draft or drafting a enchantment deck, this is an okay-ish cost enchantment to get down. Definitely would work well in an enchantment deck. So I think it has better possibility in a constructed deck. But the other side of that being 7 CMC is pretty expensive by itself. So there are probably some better options to select for that one. And so, with that, we have covered all of blue in the new Duskmourn set. We've covered the commons, the uncommons, the rares, and the mythics for the new set coming out, Duskmourn. This is my first time doing a set review. I really hope you enjoyed hanging out with me while I did the set review. I'm going to continue to move my way through all of the colors you'll see. So I've already completed white. This is blue that you just watched. We're going to have black. We're going to have red. We're going to have green. We're going to have colorless and multicolor. And then we'll even have a special short video covering the new lands and some of the new mechanics of those lands that we'll see in set. And with each of those, we're going to cover, should we draft it? Would it be better in constructed? What are my thoughts on the graphics and the 80s hoarder? So come along, follow along. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, subscribe, follow along on my my Twitch channel. If you catch those, you can find all my links on halfpump.com. And as always, until next time, we'll catch you at the table.